Let me read to you a passage from the 11th chapter of St. Mark's Gospel, verses 27 to 33. It's the Gospel for Saturday of the 8th week in Ordinary Time. St. Mark writes, Jesus and his disciples arrived again in Jerusalem, and while Jesus was walking in the temple, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders came to him. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked. "And who gave you authority to do this?" Jesus replied, "I will ask you one question. Answer me, and I will tell you by what authority I am doing these things. John's baptism, was it from heaven or from men? Tell me." They discussed it among themselves and said, "If we say from heaven," he will ask, "then why did you not believe him? But if we say from men," well, they feared the people, for everyone held that John was a prophet. So they answered Jesus, "We don't know." Jesus said, "Neither will I tell you by what authority I am doing these things." That's from Mark chapter 11, verses 27 to 33. What does it speak to us of? Well, let us say the guide to life. Why do I say that? Well, a fundamental question to be considered in life, and one that is very often neglected, is what is my guide through life? And importantly, what should be my guide? In my everyday life, what am I relying on to find my way through life's problems and issues? This, of course, raises the question of what are the important issues of life. But setting that aside for the moment, what is it that I rely on? Well, of course, from day to day, I rely on a variety of things. To a fair extent, my own private judgment is my guide. I must make a decision as to whether I ought to apply for a particular job, and after taking some advice, I rely on my own best lights and apply for the job. Perhaps my reliance on my own judgment was ill-advised, but so be it. That is one of the things I rely on. I rely on the goodwill and judgment of those around me, and accordingly, I rely on their advice and help. I ring up to book a seat in the train, and I rely on the sense of responsibility and competence of the person making the bookings. If I get to the railway station and discover that no booking has been made, and that in fact I am unable to get onto the train at all because it is packed out, I have been let down in what I relied on. If I am a tourist in a foreign country, I find I have to rely on the chance meetings with this or that person in the matter of how to get to various places. If I am given ill-informed guidance, it leads to great inconvenience. Most people naturally, and almost without thinking, depend on a variety of guides in life. But of course, life is more than going for a job, or booking for a train, or finding the right way to get somewhere. There is the fundamental question of how to become the person I can become, and I should be. There is the question of how to become good. There is the question of doing the right and moral thing, whatever this means in terms of personal convenience. There is the question of death and of dying well. There is the question of life hereafter. These are questions of philosophy and religion. In such matters, many rely on the modicum of guidance they have received over the years without considering carefully whether it was good enough or even correct at all. So then, what is the authority that I am depending on to guide me through life, especially in basic matters of religion? There are many who do not care about religion, of course, nor about what others call the ultimate questions. Their interests are immediate, or at least earthly. There are those who, when they care to think about it, dismiss the hereafter as a figment of the imagination. This life is all that there is, and beyond it there is only the grave. Any consideration of the hereafter is deemed to be a waste of time. But this is not typical of man. What is more usual is that while he accepts the hereafter, he does not bother to think much of it. So the question of a guide in life that takes him through life to happiness beyond does not arise in his mind. He lives as if there is not a hereafter, or at least as if it does not compare in substance with the present. But this is extremely short-sighted, of course, and is exactly like the man who, in full health, knows there is a future for him but refuses to think of it. The future will come, and it will leave him profoundly embarrassed. How much more so is it in the matter of the hereafter? But the issue is, who or what is to be man's guide? It comes down to two alternatives. It will come down to reliance on one's private judgment or reliance on the word of another. This is putting the alternatives in very simple terms, of course, and prescinding from an inevitable degree of overlap one with the other. Of course, to a point we all rely on others, and to a point we rely on ourselves. To a point both are necessary, but ultimately one or the other predominates. I shall be my own guide, or I shall take another for my guide. In the last analysis, the emphasis will fall on one or the other. In this sense, we can say that man stands at a junction and must go forward along one path or the other. But while he stands there, a voice comes from the cloud. This is my Son, the Beloved. Listen to him. It has been revealed to us that in the final analysis, we must depend on a guide other than ourselves, and that guide has been given to us from heaven. It is God the Son become man, Jesus Christ our brother and our Saviour, the Redeemer of the world. He is our guide, and he it is who takes us securely to our homeland in heaven, the true hereafter for man. In our Gospel today, from Mark chapter 11, verses 27 to 33, the chief priests, the teachers of the law, and the elders came to Jesus. "By what authority are you doing these things?" they asked. "And who gave you this authority to do this?" Jesus Christ has been given all authority in heaven and on earth. There is no authority greater than he. It is curious to note that some of the greatest philosophers and religious founders in the history of mankind have been profoundly mistaken. Jesus Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. He, as the disciples said to him, knows all things. "No one comes to the Father but through me," he said. Let us take him as our guide, for with him are the words of life.